Um, Welcome to this session on T-Mobile and how they migrated their many of their web applications, particularly my T-Mobile to AWS. My name is Rohit Rai. I work with AWS product marketing, and here to talk about T-Mobile, we have it's my honor and privilege to introduce Shyam Shashidharan, who is a director in their technology transformation division, and along with Shyam, we have GK, who is a principal enterprise architect with T-Mobile, and they are going to talk about how they moved many of their web applications to AWS. With that, I'll pass over the baton to Shyam.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear all. Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. I'm here to so a year ago we started on our journey towards adopting public cloud. Can I get the clicker? Okay. So wanted to give a quick introduction to T-Mobile. If you have not known T-Mobile, we were a publicly owned subsidiary of Deutsche Telekom, but we just went public. So we are publicly trading right now in a ticker called TMUS. Headquarters in Bellevue, Washington, with an employee base of approximately 38,000 employees and customer base of around 45 million. What we do also have is actually 2 flagship brands. What we did is we did a reverse IPO with Metro PCS, and then so we have 2 major brands that we own, which is Magenta, which is plain old T-Mobile US, and the other brand is Metro PCS right now. And we do have additional other sub-brands that we operate under, but basically high-level overview of T-Mobile. If you guys have not seen us in news, please take a look at it. We have a new CEO, John Legere. He's actually big into saying that we want to be the America's next Un-carrier. What does that mean, right? In an industry completely laden with contracts, fees, subsidization, and all of those, what we want to be is a company that actually transformed the industry and basically made it really customer friendly. So if you have not paid attention, please pay attention closely. We have launched out Un-carrier 1, 2.0, and 3.0 plans to basically simplify the business of wireless. So that said, my team within T-Mobile is responsible for technology transformation, and it's a big word. It's not as colorful as it is really in life. Transformation, the word comes with a lot of responsibilities. We grew from a small startup, a smaller company, and then we basically grew into a place where we have around 45 million customers. So what happened is as enterprise grew, the processes grew, became more and more complex. We lost the niche of basically the agility and we've lost the agility in reacting to the needs that was there in the enterprise. So what we had to do was basically bring back that culture of innovation and culture of, actually the culture of innovation back into the company, especially in domains that are actually troubled. So what we did is we decided that we'll kick off a Skunkworks team called Technology Transformation that will actually focus on problem areas within the business. So what we did is a year ago, we kicked off multiple programs, and 2 of the key programs that I'll actually talk to you today, which is relevant to AWS, is web transformation and public cloud transformation. So what we said is, we are a big company. We have data centers, huge data centers. We have huge investments that we have done within that space. What is our strategy for public cloud? That is a lot of dimensions that we need to take a look into. So as a company, what we didn't want to do was jump into it and then figure out that we have actually increased the risk profile of our business to a point where it's not feasible. So what we wanted was a structured, methodical approach for public cloud adoption, and that's what my team has been focusing on for the past 1 year. We definitely need to deliver some business value. What we said is, yes, it's good to do a good R&D on public cloud. It's fun for technologists. But what business value did you deliver in that time frame? And that's where web transformation came into picture. The world has moved on with web. We have a lot to catch up with the best in the world, right? So the question was, can we also combine 2 programs into one? And the decision that we did is we said, let's do a thing, right? Let's combine web transformation with cloud adoption. Let's do it together. And let's see if it works out, right? So from a life cycle perspective, what we do is anything that this team takes on, we actually do a full discovery, we do the definition. We don't hand it off from a strategy perspective. We actually go ahead and design, build, operate it for a period of time, and then transition it to the rightful owners who should actually run it forever. So it's almost like a startup within the company. You actually build the whole thing, and then you transition it off once it's mature, if that makes sense. So that said, I'll quickly jump into web transformation. I'll briefly talk about web transformation. This is not the goal of this session. So what we said is that we want to build the next generation web platform for T-Mobile. What does that mean, right? End screen architecture. We have always heard about desktop, mobile, and maybe feature phones, but what about a kiosk? What about something that comes up on a Samsung TV? Why should there be another application to generate the next screen for basically where the customer is? So our vision is that web is where the customer is, so you need to build an architecture where you can be where the customer is. So we said, let's head ahead and build out the next generation web platform, end screen by nature. As usual with every other big company, we have a gazillion website, right? We need to basically get to a point where we have cost efficiencies in terms of delivery of web. So the question was, let's get to a unified platform that can host all web properties. And at that point in time, why don't we remove the dev from the fact where business can actually control the content on their own. It's a good wish list to have, but we are trying to do our level best to support that, right? For example, to push marketing content, do the devs need to be involved, or can we give that control back into the business's hands so that you can increase the agility and increase their space, right? So the goal was to build a platform that can at a high level do all of these. From an agility perspective, we wanted to achieve three basic categories. One was, let me start from the bottom. That's the context of this one, right? Infrastructure agility, right? We definitely wanted it. Everyone associates cloud to just infrastructure. Just like in the keynote address today, it's not all about being agile in the infrastructure. It's actually only if you combine it with application architecture and all the processes that go on top of it is when you get the benefit. So basically, we flipped it upside down. First thing that we wanted was an agile business unit. What good is an infrastructure that can deploy in hours if the business unit cannot deliver requirements in hours? If the business unit takes a waterfall approach and delivers in 12 months, how good can a cloud infrastructure be to actually support them? So what you needed to do is you had to actually transform the way business works, the way they come up with their requirements, the way they come up with their features, the way they come up with the marketing content for it. Can we get agility in that, right? That was the first step in stone. The second question was the web platform in general. It's a combination of 60 to 80 products. We're not a dev company that we dev from scratch like either Microsoft or Amazon. That's not our core line of business. Our core line of business is telecom. We want to serve the customers more, spend more time on selling more phones and basically servicing you better, not basically worry about developing products, right? So we build cobbler products together. We serve as much as possible to reduce the TCO, but give the best experience to the customers. So the platform needs to be extremely agile. And the last one was definitely the infrastructure agility was one of the goals. The diagram on the right side kind of shows a high-level logical of what that is. It's content management. So when I say a web platform, what I mean is right from the top, content management, commerce, all abstraction layers, because you're basically building this on the cloud, right? Everything else. If you remember what Andy Jassy said, that was around, I think, strategy number 4 that he mentioned, where the next-gen applications are on the cloud, but everything that it depends on is still on-premise or back in our data center. So what we had to do is build a good cloud services gateway that will integrate everything we have on the cloud to our backend. Because if you know telecom, the core of telecom is billing. Billing sits in our data center back up there. Every usage that you display on a customer's bill comes from the billing system. So even if you migrate all of web onto the front end, you still have to talk to our huge infrastructure backdoor, right? So we had to build a good cloud services gateway. So that kind of shows the high-level architecture of what was a web platform, and then I'll quickly switch to cloud. Before I go into the details on the cloud, and I'll let GK go through that section, the idea was we talked about agility now, right? So when we kicked off the program, the question was, how do you prove that this is agile, right? The whole spirit was, you're kicking off a program for increasing the enterprise agility, using the cloud, blah, 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 agile mechanisms, Scrum, God knows what all, right? The question was, the challenge that was proposed to us was, can you, in a matter of 8 weeks, can you actually start from nothing to actually dropping code in production? So the challenge was, kick off the program in 8 weeks, get your new SDLC defined, make sure a point where at the end of the 8th week, your code is in dev or QA at least. And then for every subsequent sprint that is after every 3 weeks, you have to push code into production. So it is easy for startups, it's very hard for enterprises. It's even unimaginable to get a contract done in a matter of 6 weeks. So what we did is so this goes back to the strategy on how we achieved this milestone. What we did is we did a small phase 0, and we call it a perpetual phase 0. If you see the bottommost wheel, which is the largest one, we call it the perpetual phase 0 because we keep doing that every time, every year. Once that phase is over, we go on to the next project, we keep doing it. That's the one actually feeds the remaining phases. In that phase, what we did is we did a quick proof of concept, got AWS contracts going, did enough R&D to figure out what are the products, what's the stack, and who are the partners that we want to work with. Because we know that if you have to deliver in 6 to 8 weeks, you've got to have somebody who knows this stuff, right? It's difficult to train an employee to get to a point where you can actually deliver something in 6 weeks. So we did a partner selection. The phase 0 lasted around 6 weeks, approximately 6 weeks. We time boxed it. What we did, another thing is, there is a tendency for programs to keep on growing forever. So our idea was, let's not do that. Let's time box the effort. And that's where the first bullet is called perpetual beta. There is no guarantee of delivery. That's the good part about where the team was given the leverage to say, yes, we can fast fail. Without that, this whole program would not have launched. So there was a untold agreement that these guys are going to try something aggressive. If they fail, great. We'll learn from it and we'll run again. Right? So perpetual beta, development kickoff within 2 weeks, which basically means that the developer should be coding, physically coding in 2 weeks. If you go back to the previous slide, which means that the business had to have something done, the design done. We're building a web page, right? So where are the basics, right? Where's my commerce engine? I don't even get a download from my vendor in 2 weeks, right? So jump through all those hurdles. The biggest problem was we have to design a multi-partner, multi-vendor environment, which basically means there's not one product or one family of partners that can help you. You need across the board help. In our case, right from Amazon to Adobe to IBM to HP to everyone, right? Any vendor that you see, you need their support to go ahead. So you need to build an SDLC that supports it. The key factor is, if you're building it on the cloud, can we get the benefit of scale up, scale down? Not from a production perspective, from a development team perspective. What that means is, a huge project comes in, you have a steady state team of 10 people, but you suddenly need to deliver something seriously big to the company. You basically staff up and the team size has to go up to 10 times the size. I'm just speculating. The question is, hypothesizing, sorry. So what you do is you basically say, can I have an infrastructure where I can actually spawn off those development teams for a short period of 3 months and basically bring it down? At that point in time, I do not want to invest in environments. I don't want to invest in deployment areas. That's my, if I really have to do it in my traditional world, I would have to buy those servers. I would have to have that 6 months lead time. Cloud was beautiful because all you do is you just go ahead, spawn the environments off, let the teams run, exactly the same way you tear them down, right? So the question is, can you get there? So we did a quick benefit analysis, and the biggest point that we actually noted, especially in terms of Amazon, our goal was basically very clear, right? We were doing public cloud adoption, so we didn't have a choice, even if one of the tick marks were on this side, to go do something else. But this is the end state of where we were. When you look at upfront investments, think of it as a startup within a bigger company. If you think of upfront investments, Amazon definitely helped us a lot in kickoff, right? Environment setup time, we have weeks right now, week to months right now. We could go down from weeks to hours. CapEx investment for full load. When we started the project in October last year, all we had was a fragment of a budget, which we would have spent 3 times for it for hardware procurement. Instead, we could actually invest in people, processes, and technology to test it out for 3 months. So agility and burst, even from a CapEx, OpEx perspective, it actually helped us. And the last point was really important. Failure is very expensive in the old world. You buy up a huge infrastructure and you figure out that the hardware is not the right choice. We actually ran into an issue where 2 weeks into it, we realized that one of the basic platforms that we selected was not the right strategic platform. So we had to take a full 360-degree route on that particular component within the architecture after we started dev. Had we procured the infrastructure, the project was a dead go. I mean, it was basically killed on that particular day. In case of Amazon, that shielded us from all those risky propositions. So from here, what I'll do is I'll let GK cover this. GK is a principal architect within my team actually that leads cloud adoption. So he'll actually go through the cloud journey and the more technical aspects of what we did within the cloud space. GK.
Thank you, Shyam. Good afternoon. Now I'll explain our cloud journey, the entire life cycle of our cloud experience, and also how we did the platform rollout. To a quick recap, our mission is technology transformation in a cost-effective way. And our mandate is not only provide the hypothetical solutions or reference architectures, but also a workable solution. And if needed, we need to scale up, fully launch the application into the production till we find a home, like what Shyam stated earlier. So due to this nature, what we choose was public cloud, because we want to make this entire, we do a lot of R&D initiatives. We don't know at the beginning whether we can take that entire solution onto the production or not. We may get the failures. So we want to minimize our costs and upfront investments. So that's where we went with the public cloud adoption. Our long-term strategy is a private cloud or a hybrid cloud. We have a lot of data centers. We have a lot of captive investments. Whether we have infrastructure, softwares, applications, tools, everything available. We want to utilize them. And also, there are some scenarios where we may not move some of our applications onto the cloud. And because of the nature of the application and not support on the virtual, those applications may not be supported on the virtual environments. In those scenarios, we want to use hybrid cloud. In this way, we can get the best of public cloud as well as private cloud. So when we move to when we are looking for a public cloud adoption, some of the key considerations we made was integration. Like earlier Shyam was explaining. On our web platforms or our solutions, we have a lot of dependency on the backend systems, on-premise on-premise systems. Either billing or like a profile, customer profile, or a lot of other systems have web has a dependency. So how do we do the integration? Security. Subscriber security is utmost important to T-Mobile. We have very stringent security requirements on the T-Mobile side. So how we can adopt those or bring those security features or requirements onto the public cloud. Performance and scalability. How we achieve the existing performance SLAs, or how we can scale the systems. Scalability may not be an issue on the public cloud. If we design our application correct, then we have virtually infinite infrastructure, so scaling is not an issue, but definitely a performance because of the involvement of the different locations and different systems on-premise, on the cloud. So how we can achieve those. Next one is the workload allocation. So this is especially when we go with the hybrid cloud, how we can distribute workloads between private cloud and public cloud. Whether running active-active, private cloud and public cloud, active-active mode and distribute the traffic, or partial traffic here and there. So, and also how we will keep the systems operate. Next one is the availability. and fault tolerance. We have very high available systems currently exist. When we migrate those applications onto the web, we need to keep the same availability SLAs. How we can meet those requirements, because on the cloud, different components have a different availabilities. So, but as a whole solution, we need to keep the availability of the existing SLAs. People and process. Over the period, we have enterprises build the various processes. How we can bring those processes onto the public cloud, but at the same time, how can we keep the agility of the public cloud? People, it is a complete paradigm from enterprise to public cloud. So how we can change that culture, how we can support public cloud systems. These are some of the key considerations we looked and we made some decisions. So how we choose the cloud partner, how we roll out the platform. And in this entire process, how did we move from choosing the cloud partner to finally launch the production solution? So while we were looking for we made a strategic decision that we will go with the public cloud adaptation. Then we were looking for the partners. There are various cloud providers providing the solutions. So we looked at our needs, our requirements, application requirements, and also our infrastructure or applications, softwares, licenses, tools, and all this stuff. Also, we also looked at the location, the proximity to our data centers, and also transport vendors, so that we don't have to spend a lot of time to directly connect to the cloud providers. We were mainly looking at what data centers or what locations cloud provider and also the T-Mobile has co-located, so that we don't have to deploy the switches or any other network equipment to connect back. Maturity. Since we are new to the public cloud, we are doing a lot of experiments. So we are looking at the cloud providers who is mature in that space and also who has the products available. Another consideration while choosing the cloud partner was cost. It is just not the cost of the cloud provider or the infrastructure or the particular cloud platform, the holistic, complete ecosystem, our applications, the network, whole thing. We looked at the cost analysis. And also the products, what products can run on what platforms. By looking at all these requirements, we chose AWS suits our needs, and we selected AWS as our first cloud partner. We identified the cloud partner, then we looked at the cloud stack. We have approximately around 60 products that we are using on the web. So these products, when we are migrating the web onto the public cloud, so we looked at what applications or the softwares that can compatible on the web and what are available outside. So whether they meet our needs or not. We looked at the whole various number of applications and their compatibility onto the various environments. We did the cost analysis. We have enterprise license agreements. Some of them can be ported onto the public cloud. But we looked at the cost, what is available, what our license model, and what is available on our compatible products on the marketplaces. And then we choose the products. So with all this, we finalized the entire application stack, and then we moved on to the environment setup. So we have 2 weeks to deliver the environment for development. So we don't have much time to build the holistically, completely well-integrated platform or the environment. So we started with the standalone environment. We took the Amazon's AMIs, and we did a manual provisioning. We hardened the images, and we hand off the dev teams to start with the development. Then we looked at what is the complete integration, how we can do the integration. We created a VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. Amazon has this feature, so This will give the ability for us to define our own network, our own subnets. We use our own IP space. We can use our IP routing and our own security gateways. Virtually, we extended our data centers to cloud. We established a site-to-site VPN to start with. So we communicate to our backend systems with VPN connectivity. Operational tools. The next one is we deployed a lot of operational tools for monitoring security. We deployed security tools, and we completely automized whole environment so that we can launch the environment with one click. That was our end state. So we have a cloud partner. We choose the application stack. We build the environment. So we created a platform to support our needs of web. So what are all the features? I'll briefly go over some of the features we built on the platform. Virtual private cloud, like I just said, virtual private cloud gives the ability to define your own network. So we created a virtual private cloud. Comprehensive security controls. As I stated earlier, T-Mobile has a very, very stringent requirements. Our corporate information security, we had to go through. To move on to the public cloud, initially we got a lot of resistance from our corporate information security teams. We had to go through them, how we can meet all enterprise security standards. So we built security layers at each security controls at each and every layer. I'll go through the next slides. What are all the security controls we built on the platform? Distributed application deployment. So we have a high availability is very critical for us. So we built a different availability zones. That means we have at least 2 or 3 availability zones we deployed our applications. So that if there is a downtime at one of the availability zone or data center, the traffic can still serve from the other availability zones. We connected back, we established a site-to-site VPN tunnel, and we are connecting back to the T-Mobile data centers for back office applications and the subscriber information and other applications. So also we have multiple data centers available. From cloud, we connect back to the each and multiple data centers, so that if link goes down on the one data center, we still operate with the connectivity to the other data centers. Security, ongoing security process. Customers this is the application that we deployed on public cloud was My T-Mobile. That is where self-service tool, where customer can go and pay their bills. They can manage their profiles. Also, they can purchase plans. So what we did was we created a lot of security processes, tools on this platform. So this platform meets all security requirements that PCI related compliance requirements. Auto scaling. We designed all applications by leveraging the AWS auto scaling feature and made the entire environment to scale up and scale down in case of traffic bursts. We also built the disaster recovery environment in completely different location, so to meet the business continuity. Our traffic primarily goes on to the primary data center, and in case of failure of the primary data center, we will switch the traffic to disaster recovery data center. We also use the DRs for during our maintenance and deployments on the primary data center. And application environments. We automate the whole process, the application environments. We created a template, so use anybody, whenever there is a need for an environment, we can do one-click environment. We can just go log in and click the one click, you get the environment. I'll just briefly talk about during the automation of the environment provisioning, we went through the 3 stages. The first one is manual provisioning. Like I stated earlier, we used the Amazon instances, did the manual provisioning. The challenge is with the manual provisioning is launching the number of instances, because it is on the public cloud, and we have every team, whatever the team that wants to develop, or this is the common platform we build the common platform for all web properties. So multiple teams are working at the same time. They have a needs for the environment. So we don't want to take much time to give them the environment. So what we did was we created a silent installation scripts. We took the Amazon images, we bootstrapped them with the Amazon images. So you can launch with one click with the OS Plus application. In the second part of in the second stage, we haven't centralized the configuration management, but still people have to use the manual configuration. Then finally, in the third stage, we automate the complete environment provisioning with centralized configuration management and with the templates. So I'll explain how the user can get the provision and how we created the templates. During the process of the creating the environments, as I stated earlier, we created a silent installation scripts. Then we onboarded a new components and associated the details with them. We use cookbooks, recipes, and attributes. Then we associated the metadata, created a template. Then we tested them and released them into the catalog. We have a service management platform. It provides the portal self-service portal where customers can log into this portal. They can view the products from the catalog. They can choose the catalog and they can launch. They can submit for the environment. We created a workflow based on the type of the subscription, based on the type of the user, based on the type of the environment. It will go through the appropriate workflow. Some scenarios, it will automatically launch. We can give the environment without any approvals, or some scenarios, it will go to the appropriate approvers, and after the approval, the environment will be launched. Security. So, like I stated earlier, we have a very stringent security requirements. So, what we did was, from the network infrastructure security, classified into the two, network security and system security. For the network security, we use VPC and define our own IP space. So we created a different subnet. So we have a subnet segregation. The second one is we use the Amazon's features like ACLs and security groups. We installed DOS and DDoS tools. So from the system security perspective, we harden the environment. T-Mobile has a very, their own hardening guidelines. So we use T-Mobile hardening guidelines and we harden the environment. We install the antivirus onto the system. Each and every server that is running on the public cloud will have the antiviruses running. We also deployed host-based intrusive detection systems and preventive systems. And we have a secure patch management. That means periodically the patches will be applied automatically. For high availability, we build the high availability from the whole solution perspective. So we build the redundancy at each and every layer. We design the application, all the stuff. We had to go through a lot of complications to build this high availability. But we have this high available systems. Sorry, I'm going back to I only talked about the infrastructure security. For application and data security, at the application we do the static code and dynamic code analysis. Each and every change will go through this code analysis. We made it part of the build so that whenever the new build is coming in, automatically they will go through the analysis. Also, we are using a web application firewall so that all our traffic will go through the web application firewall. It catches all cross-site scripting and all other kind of issues. Assurance. We have SEM tools. So all the traffic will be monitored continuously, and there are some patterns we have. So we detect any threats, and alerts will be generated. Also, we run the host scans, also application scans biweekly. Currently, we are running biweekly. So we identify any issues or security vulnerabilities on the platform. We also do periodically run the pen tests. Third parties run the pen tests for us, so to make sure it will go through the complete security cycle. We also install our own identity and access management system. We provision all users on the identity and access management system. If the user is not on the, and also we defined various various access controls. We have a very detailed level of access controls. So users who are not part of the identity and access management system, they can't even access the systems, or they can't even connect to any of the systems. So with that, I will hand off to Shyam, who will go through how AWS is supporting us and what is our experience with the AWS. Thank you.
Hopefully it gave a quick overview of what we went through. I'll actually go back to the previous slide. Just 1 second. So we put the slide on purpose just to say that if you look at the cross-section of this team in there, you actually see that each of these functions today within any organization is done by a separate set of individuals. Let's talk about assurance. Let's talk about application security. Let's talk about infrastructure security. Just that slide list in there, if you don't bring the cloud Kool-Aid, that is a set of human beings, tools and processes that you have today in your enterprise that actually forms together and actually delivers each product for you. Talking about cloud and moving people to cloud, it actually impacts every aspect of that, right? So just to get operational readiness, it's education. It's basically a resistance from people who feel uncomfortable. It was more of an education exercise for us. It was a pleasant exercise for us because everyone around was actually eager to learn and thought that cloud was basically the next thing. So we had for example, the CIS team worked with us and learned with us and actually helped us to put the right security controls in place. The operations team did the same. So it was a good learning experience across the board, but the key was for everyone out there, be aware that it is not an easy step, right? Spend your time, get the right partners and so on. And from a lead on to the next slide, AWS account management, the best way to test somebody's product is to say, how many times did I have to call them, or did I never have to call them, right? So good thing about AWS is I don't think that we trouble them a lot, and they troubled us a lot, so it's been an awesome experience. So everyone from the account management team, other than when we meet them once every 6 months, it's been awesome. That doesn't mean that we don't like them, but the enterprise, same thing with the enterprise support team. We have tickets in the cycle around it, but the responsiveness and the support that we have got from AWS across the products, it has been amazing. We pretty much use everything that is listed in that box in there. That was not an Amazon slide. That was what we said, what we actually use today. And just to say where we are today, we started a year ago with nothing on the cloud. In a year, on October 31st, we launched our first web platform and migrated around 20 million customers onto Amazon. So fully cut over, half of our customer traffic is on Amazon, and it's up and running, and we're testing it through right now. All the products that you see is being used. Glacier and Direct Connect is still in progress. We are still in the process of procurement. Our traffic is not at a point where we are not running big data products on there. We are not running huge data traffic on there. We're just doing service calls and service transactions, which does not require us to have a Direct Connect yet, but we are in the process of getting there. Amazing set of products. Love the products that we have. Yes, we need some feature requests that we need to put in place to get more, but it's been a good experience. The additional item was basically the partner support. So I like what the speaker in the keynote said. It's as much as us reaching out to figure out who can help us more in this space, right? So we had amazing partner support. Infosys, for example, has been our core partner for this cloud delivery. The Infosys cloud team has absolutely helped us a lot with this product and launch. They are in the booth. You can actually meet them and talk to them. Amazon Professional Services actually helped us with architecture review, any guideline. We have a constant flow of ideas through them, anything new R&D-wise, which actually goes through all the partners that we have. So we basically build a set of partner pool that actually helps us with AWS and Infosys being our primary, and then we are actually expanding the pool, and we're reaching out to everyone in this booth also to expand that pool for the next use case that we have. We feel comfortable about web, but we have yet another 100 use cases to go through. So huge thanks to both the partners and AWS for the support for last year. That said, I think that comes to the end of the time that was allocated to us, and we'll go to Q&A. Rohit? Yeah.
How long do you estimate this project would take if you've done this on traditional on-premises?
The key difference would have been the question of whether the project would have launched or not. So it's actually more than the time. It would actually be could we have actually triggered this initiative or not? So if you look at the actual physical cost in terms of procurement of infrastructure, which is basically what everyone focuses on, that would have been maybe 6 to 8 weeks and we would have got there, but the real thing was, did we have enough cash to actually start this project? So the opportunity cost of not starting the project would have been huge, because this is all about customer self-service and having that. So I feel that more than the time duration, it's actually whether we have done the project or not. If not for AWS and public cloud, I can pretty much say it would have been a huge uphill battle to actually kick off the project. We were cash strapped at the end of October. There were 2 months to start. The budget just got assigned. Last 3 months of the year is a hard time to go get new budget for a new project, right? So our entire expense on AWS was $30,000 at the end of that year. That's all it costs for infrastructure. We don't have a single infrastructure within T-Mobile. We didn't have any infrastructure. Everyone bought their laptops. Everything else was on AWS. The net cost of our infrastructure was $30,000. So that's the difference with how, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. So what we did strategically is to say that we wanted to go through, so my team was responsible for public cloud adoption in the right way, right? So what we said is our first was to get the entire company to agree that, to educate the company to say, is this the right thing to do? So we divided up our risks. We identified the first application which does not require any customer data on AWS. If you look at web, it's a clear pass-through, comes in, hits the backend. So we pretty much didn't sign up for any storage of customer data in AWS. Then we went through all the security hurdles, got the PCI compliance requirements and everything. So now we are at a point where we have kicked off POCs on saying, how can I do CPNI on public cloud? But we want to be extremely careful with it. We do not want to put customer data out there at any place where we're not comfortable with. So we are going through the next steps in figuring out what is that balance. Also identifying the risk profile of applications to figure out if we put there, how does that expose the company on. So we haven't migrated customer data to public cloud at all. But we are in the process of evaluating it. I think that will be the next stage. So in our phase 0, we did go through that assessment in terms of so let me answer it in 2 ways. The team was tasked to figuring out how to adopt public cloud properly, so we had to do an inventory of all public cloud vendors, right? So we went through AWS, Azure, Rackspace, and then IBM's, Verizon's, the whole shebang. We did a quick SWOT on what their strengths were. Then we had to identify, we extended the analysis into the domain that we wanted to first migrate on. So the domain that we picked was, in this case, web applications, right? So then we went into the nuance of figuring out what is that web application stack going to look like, make it in a cloud agnostic fashion, right? What would I want the ideal web platform to look like? Once we figured that out, we did the options on what are the different versions of it, a product, an open source version of it, and so on. And then we did a matrix analysis with what's compatible in AWS, what's in Azure, what's in Rackspace, and so on. At that point in time, we were pretty much clear that at that point in time, we definitely found that AWS was like at least a year or two ahead of all the other competitors in terms of the features that we needed. It was pretty obvious to us at that particular point for the stack that we chose, especially because of the, if you go back to the slide, right? If you look at all the components in there, it was very obvious. It was a year ago. I haven't redone the exercise yet. So it was pretty clear that AWS was right out there, way ahead of time. So that was a quick one. But the question was, are we designing it only for AWS, or are we going to make it cloud agnostic? And our goal is to be cloud agnostic. So we basically designed it so that we can move it out. We are experimenting, but I still feel AWS is way out ahead of a lot of other providers. Did I answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
So you talked a lot about high availability, and then you also talked about VPN connections to the back office for data residing back in the data center. Can you talk about the choice of VPN compared with extending a firewall around or extending your data center's perimeter into AWS, and why you went one way or the other?
Thierry, do you want to take that?
Yeah, we have extended our data center, but from the transport perspective, we have to go with based on like some of our requirements. Our choice was like also whatever the extension, but still we have to use some kind of encryption. So that's where we went with the site to site.
So when we do the VPC, we have a certain set of options that we have, right? But at the end of the day, it is a VPN connection that goes in there. We can add more link redundancies and things like that, but it's a direct connect, or it's basically, so when we did phase 0, that's the initial kickoff phase, we just did over the air, right? And then we basically went into VPN connections for the VPC with link redundancies and so on. The next step would be, an evolution would be the direct connect. But those are the only options that I am aware of to connect to AWS, because it's our IP space and whatnot. So I'm not, did we answer your question? Or?
It's more about the stability of that VPN connection.
Okay.
And how you get to the high availability that you're expecting with a VPN connection at two ends that can fail at either end.
Yeah.
And shake you apart.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, we have, like I said, like we have multiple VPN connectivities, and we do put some checks. So if the link goes down on either end, we are making at we are also have at the application level also we are making the health checks. So not only at the VPN level, but also at the application we are keep monitoring. So one of them goes down, like it will trigger the fall back to the other one. But there are some scenarios where on the Amazon side, if it goes down or if there is a problem on any of this one, we may have some issues. But we also have the back channel. We are also trying to connect to the servers from our end and trying to do the application health check. So we have different mechanisms, not only just at the link level, but we are also using a couple of other options to make sure we have connectivity there and it is alive.
Yeah, we've had issues when basically one side of the tunnel goes down and then it is a pain. So we have taken as much as possible redundancies that we can put into places, especially if the Amazon side goes in, we don't have control over what that can be. So yes, we have run into some and we have taken as much as we can, hopefully. Is it? Yeah. What is the tool? Yes. I haven't come across the name CloudFormation. Is that a product or a? Okay. No. So basically, I'm not aware of cloud. Have you heard of CloudFormation?
No, we are doing it differently.
Okay. So what we did is, I'm not aware of. So what we strategically decided is that we need to have a place where the environment templates and prototypes are actually mapped up, because our world is not AWS alone. AWS is the start of it. If you look at what we have built, it's actually 50 to 60 products built up on top of everything that you see here, right? So application configuration management cannot live and breathe AWS. Strategically, it is I would say, at least from my perspective, it would have been a big miss to basically be completely dependent on AWS for anything related to a full configuration management, because there is more than cloud that we need to take care of. So we on purpose made sure that anything related to an environment templating, and especially up to an application level, is managed and operated separately. Long term, if your plan is that it has to be hybrid, then the same infrastructure needs to extend there. So we have a separate mechanism. Yeah.
I noticed in one of the slides you had your DR in a separate region.
Yeah.
Are they identically replicated? And if so, how was that experience?
So we have a site-to-site replication for anything that needs replication. We were initially putting it as dormant with a startup time of around 2 hours to start it back up. But the cost of, when we went live, the cost of keeping it alive is not that much. So basically we use, for example, DataGuard to migrate the app, the Oracle stuff, the database replications and so on. So we keep it live. Right now we're keeping it live with the replications for any component that needs replication. But if we shut it down, I think the prediction is around 2 hours to start up the environment to make it fully functional. Yes. We are a telecom. The question might be different from whether you're in telecom or not. The Reconnect, and that area is part of our bread and butter. So I wouldn't be able to speak on how exactly we got there, but we are pretty comfortable with the Direct Connect, and the cost didn't look that high. The setup and the we have decided to start it, but maybe somewhere in Jan we haven't started using it. Were you asking about the pros and cons and how did we get to the right choice for the Direct Connect?
Correct. Or the pros and cons of why you're choosing Direct Connect over the VPN.
Okay, so I can answer that piece without going into the nuances of which Direct Connect vendor and whatnot. Right? So the volume of data that is getting transferred back and forth. So for a web traffic, the payload is very minuscule. So the payload is very minuscule, and the latency that we need for the web app, without a Direct Connect, we're actually getting what it is. It's only adding a couple of 100 milliseconds here and there. But when we move into a paradigm, for example, even now when we ship the web logs back to our security information SIEM system, the lot of bandwidth is being used. And now we want to get to a point where we want to analyze the customer experience real time. So the data shipment requirement between the two sites is actually increasing in in an order of magnitude where we will get to a point where we need Direct Connect to basically be in business. Especially the analytical systems. If you have analytical system running on the cloud and you do have to ship back and forth a big bulk load, then we would like to rely on something more bigger, fatter pipe. Yeah. So we didn't have any latency issues. We didn't have any. It's actually the use case issue in terms of what is the size and how big a pipe we need. Our current applications, I don't think would need Direct Connect. I don't predict that the entire web, if you migrate everything, we still would need Direct Connect. So, but if I move some parts of the BI database in there, I definitely want it before I start the project. Yes. We do use the AWS for the disaster recovery. We actually, for the web, right? So this is our disaster recovery, which is basically in a complete different AWS region. It is AWS. The primary and secondary is within one availability zone, two availability zone within one region, and the DR is in a different region. It's nowhere near our existing data centers. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I can blame GK for that. Any other questions? But thank you, gentlemen, for joining, and thank you for the time. Hopefully, look forward to meeting most of you guys outside.